All right, I'm going to go ahead and admit we have 10 in the lobby with people just rapidly adding. So I'll admit and then maybe another minute or two and then we can start, okay?
Okay.
Hello and welcome to the chapter virtual event. We'll get started in just a moment. We have some people still coming in, and so give us just a minute and we'll get started. All right, thank you all for joining. We're going to go ahead and get started with our April chapter virtual event. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a great presentation for you. My name is Catherine Bryant. I'm one of the volunteers with the Atlanta chapter. I'm going to go over some of the ground rules and then turn it over to our featured speaker to be introduced. Some of the housekeeping rules, please mute your microphones. Certainly, you are able to turn on your microphones if you have questions. We'd love for this to be an interactive event, but just so everyone can hear and make sure that we don't have much background noise, keep your microphones on mute. Feel free to leave your cameras on. We'd love to see your smiling faces. If you have any questions during the speaker presentation, please enter them in the chat tab. I will be interacting with him throughout the event, asking any questions that we have along the way as relevant. Again, you're welcome to also take yourself off mute and ask questions along the way. At the end of this event, we will have a survey. Please respond to the survey in the chat. And at the end of the presentation, we would love your feedback on this event and ideas for other events moving forward. We are recording this presentation, so we will send it out at the end with the slides. So you will have, you will be able to watch this again and pick up any notes that you might have missed throughout the presentation. So keynote presentation will last approximately until 6:45 unless there's great interaction along the way, then it might go all the way till 7. And then we'll wrap up no later than 7 o'clock this evening. And now I will turn it over to Anne to introduce our featured speaker.
Hello, PMI Atlanta. Get ready for a treat. Our keynote speaker is a world-class speaker and a world-class trainer. So get your writing materials ready. I'm serious about this. Keynote speaker is a business transformation expert extraordinaire. He specializes in the innovative use of systems, strategies, and solutions to help enterprises and individuals get from where they are to where they want to be. Born and raised in Atlanta, our keynote speaker received his formal training at Duke University, where he earned dual degrees in electrical engineering and computer science. After completing his formal education, he claims to have earned advanced degrees and what he termed real education from UHK, that is the University of Hard Knocks. Our keynote speaker is an award-winning motivational speaker, voted #1 speaker in Georgia in 2015 and 2016 by Toastmasters International. For over a decade now, he has been recognized by the National Speakers Association as one of the top 5 speakers in Georgia. Many companies, social and business groups within the United States have been motivated by his message of untapped power in each person. May I remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that you're in for a treat because our keynote speaker is noted for his energetic and passionate, sincere delivery. Today, our dynamic keynote speaker will share some key components of his financial empowerment education to help us manage the most important project of our lives, Project Wealth. Our keynote speaker is a senior technical specialist with Microsoft and the CEO of Power Builders, Richard Hardon. Ladies and gentlemen, just for this moment, you know me, you have my permission to unmute your devices. Please put your hands together and help me welcome financial educator and business success coach extraordinaire and our keynote speaker, Mr. Richard Hardon.
Oh, wow. What an awesome introduction, Ann. I certainly appreciate you and your energy and your audience, and I'm excited to share this information on Project Financial Success today. And I think, after you get an introduction that good, I feel like I have to do something impressive, like float across the room or fly. But I want to make sure that today we do a couple of things. First, we learn. Second, we laugh. And then third, we share what we've learned. Is that okay? So as we go through this conversation, you'll learn a lot of things about me, my process, and the things I've been through. But what I will tell you is that just a few short years ago, there was no one jumping on Zoom to hear anything I had to say about money or finance. But you could probably imagine it's difficult to be excited when you are behind on your success plan. Does that make sense? So as we get started, before I jump in, I want to get some feedback from those of you that are out there listening. Just in a few short words, what does financial success mean to you? I'll pause for a second so you have time to enter on your text device if you are tapping or on your keyboard. But I want to be very clear about my process and approach. Michelle said generational wealth. So not just this generation, but your children and their children. I love that. Who else? I know it takes longer to type than it does for me to read. And as we go through the process, there are several things that we want to identify in the success plan. As project managers, you always look at the process and understand that there'll be obstacles, difficulties, and things between you and the successful completion of the mission or the project. And for many of us, we got signed up into the money game, into a game where we're required to create our own financial success without people telling us the rules. So today I'm going to break those things down. Janet said independence. And then Shauna shared that being a good steward of your members/customers' invested money. Carla Reed, I love that answer. Debt-free is the new free, isn't it? Yep. What else? Keep them coming. Because here's what I understand. In creating a financial success plan, I make the disclosure up front. I'm not a financial advisor, tax advisor. I'm a financial educator. I put myself in a position to teach the things that I didn't learn in school, but needed to know to get to what I wanted from my life. Meaning growing up, I wanted to be wealthy. Is there anybody else out there that wanted to be wealthy? Thumbs up in the reactions or thumbs up in the chat. Just want to make sure that we're talking about the same thing. Now, here's the reality. One of my favorite cartoons was a show named Richie Rich. Did anybody remember that show? Are we the same age group or am I much older? And in that show, Richie Rich had diamonds that were the doorknobs to his house. And as I would walk around my grandmother, Jacqueline Rick's house, I would imagine that I was turning diamonds for doorknobs to get into the next room. And I did the things that they said to do traditionally to create success. Meaning a formula they taught us here in Atlanta: go to school, get good grades so you can go to college, get a good job with benefits, and live happily ever after. Now, checking in, is that what they told you where you're from? I'm from Atlanta, by the way. I'm one of those rare people that you find in Atlanta that's actually from Atlanta. So I remember vividly when there was a time when there was only 2 lanes all the way down I-20. But as I grew up, I got out into the workplace and did those things. I graduated top of my class. And here's a funny thing, from Douglas High School in Atlanta. So I knew I'd learned everything they intended to teach me. And then when I went off to Duke with the double major, I got into the workplace, realized I had this big ticket education, but I didn't know what I needed to succeed financially, and proceeded to make mistakes, have challenges, have problems, but in those problems were my opportunities to learn. So as I share my screen, I'll have some questions for you as we go through some things. Wait a second. Let's get that view better. And think through this process. So project financial success. Oh, by the way, let me make sure that we congratulate each of you on being a participant. That for those of you that aren't aware, April is National Financial Literacy Month. Founded by Jumpstart close to the year 2000, there was an initiative to initially have youth financial literacy, as more and more young people were entering the workforce, not understanding the ins and outs and mechanics of earning, saving, investing, protecting, and building their assets because of the lack there was in the school system. So initially it was geared for young people, but what we found was that adults didn't know these things either. In my case in point, I relate to you as an audience, particularly as project managers, because that's where my career started. Quick snapshot, and told you a lot of things about me, but one thing I want to focus on is right here in the middle. I started my career, my first job was at Capgemini. Everybody familiar with them? International consulting company. Back then, they were part of the Big Six, which has further collapsed over time. But in that first job, I started off as an individual implementer in the analysis, design, and development of enterprise technology systems, and then went on to join many software companies, probably you've heard of, Oracle, Salesforce, right now at Microsoft. And here's what I understood about each of my employers was they wanted me to be the best employee, to have all the competencies in the things that were important to them: customer-centric presentation, storytelling, discovery, team building. But then at the same time, every time we closed a deal, it initiated a new project. Most cases in enterprise software, millions of dollars. The reality, though, was that each of these companies, they groomed me, they trained me, but in terms of my financial success, their goal was not to make me wealthy. Their goal was to keep me working. Can anybody relate to just finding out that after all the education, all the professional certifications, what I learned when I went to work was, go to school, get more grades, get more certifications, get more documentation of your skills so that you can make more money. Make more money, make more money, make more money. I was a money-making machine, but I found myself on that treadmill where something that my grandmother told us very early on proved itself to be true. She had a saying. She said, the more you make, the more they take. Has anybody ever heard that before? Now, in my case, I had heard it before. I just didn't know who they were. So in my conversation today, if you're taking notes, jot down my outline so that you'll know when I'm close to the conclusion of my presentation. I'm going to count down from 4 to 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. Conversation for financial success. Now, when you get to 1, we can blow some things up. We're going to talk about the 4 challenges and the 4 thieves that took the money, because those were the questions I was asking. Where'd my money go? How can I get it back? Who took it? And once I get my money back, how can I get it to stay with me longer, do more for me, and grow independent of me? As we go through the conversation, we'll talk about the challenges. We'll talk about the 3 strategic solutions that we've been able to integrate in a process called income shifting. It's a project that I encourage all of you to take on. And then last, I'll provide the beginnings of a step-by-step process for getting your financial house in order to accomplish the 2 objectives that, whether we know each other or not, our money has in our lives today. Is that okay? As we jump in, just remember this. Number 4.
If you are supposed to be sharing any slides, they have gone.
No, that I was not sharing slides.
Okay, perfect.
I was just talking. I try to make sure to come back. This thing about Teams for me is I like to see where people are. And when I'm sharing slides, I can only see slides. So
Thank you.
It's not a problem. It's not a problem. Oh, by the way, let me let you know that I will go back and forth between slides so that when I come back here, I can check the chat and see if there have been any questions for me. Okay.
Sounds great. Thanks.
All right. Let's see. All right. So all right. That was bizarre. I'm back. Can you hear me now?
I can.
Yes, I thought it
Present.
was me. Yes.
Present. Be careful when you click the 2 X's that are close together real fast. You might be outside the meeting just talking to yourself about slides. Note to self. But if you think about our money and the flow of cash into our lives, the 4 thieves that usually rob us of our cash flow are taxes, debt, big business, and inflation. And even though most people don't think of it this way, this is where our struggles begin. And I'll start with our biggest foe, and it's taxes. Meaning, if you think about it right now, the first third of our income, I call it the chainsaw massacre, gets taken off. Our check gets cut off at the head by 33% going to income taxes. And then every dollar that we have and every dollar that we spend subsequent to that dollar actually gets taxed. Here in Atlanta, we have what they call that 7% sales tax. If you want to buy something that costs $1, you need $1.07. Also, at the same time, because taxes take such a big chunk of our money, it puts many people in a position where they have to go into debt for the things that there are in life. Like at this point, it's often difficult for people to even understand the process of having a home without a mortgage, a car without a note, a student without a loan, or credit without some cards. But the second 1/3 of our income goes to the service of the debt, the interest payments for the things that we borrowed because there wasn't enough money in the first place. Now, you can already start to feel my frustration. If I started off at 6 figures at 100,000, but I'm down to 33,000, the other 2 roadblocks knock the rest of the income off the table between big business and inflation, which are 2 sides of the same coin. Meaning on the one hand, big business has an ongoing cash extraction calendar, where every 30 days they are marketing intensely another reason for us to separate with that last money that we have. Right now, we're in April, so Easter's coming up this weekend. But then all you gotta do is look down the calendar to May and see that there'll be Mother's Day, and in June there'll be Father's Day, in July there'll be the 4th of July. August we go back to school, September there's Labor Day, October Halloween, November Thanksgiving, December Christmas, January starts the new year. February, celebrate your love with Valentine's Day. In March, you go to spring break, and then we're back around to April. Every 30 days, close to a pay period, you'll find a holiday and a reason to spend money. And then for this year in particular, these last 3 years, we used to call inflation the silent income killer because the price of goods and services normally go up at just about 4% per year. But during this whole pandemic and process, we've seen prices skyrocket, starting with all you got to do is look at the price of a tank of gas and what a dollar cannot buy, and understand that our dollars are buying less and less, and there are fewer of them. So if you ever had that frustration about where'd my money go without it being something that was a conscious action of yours, understand the deck is stacked in a way to keep us working. Make sense so far? Everybody got all 4 challenges? Now, here's a blessing. I didn't get together with you on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon in Atlanta. It's a beautiful day outside, by the way. Make sure you get some vitamin D and go outside after we're done. But if you think about it, we have 3 solutions, 3 strategies through what I call it, the process I call income shifting. And here's the goal, is to shift our income from the highest tax bracket to the lowest tax bracket. Now, here's our reality as workers. I make the assumption that most of us have an employer other than ourselves right now. With income shifting, we understand that the first thing that we have to do is to increase your cash flow. Write that in your notes. That's strategy number 1. Strategy number 2 is to build a business income. Yes, I'm saying that whatever job you have, make sure that we do some things that give you some control of your income. And then the third critical element is to start the process of generating investment income where our money is making money. And there are some specific strategic things with that process. And we'll start with the first, which is a place everyone can start. Now, when it comes to cash flow, let me make sure that I check in on that. Everybody got 4 and 3. 4 challenges, 3 solutions. Yes? We're good over here. Thumbs up. Any questions in the chat?
None. Thank you.
Okay. In this process, when it comes to shifting our income, the first thing that we have to do is understand the importance of cash flow and cash flow management, because this was one of my fundamental misconceptions, meaning I thought that I had an income problem. In reality, I had a cash flow problem, meaning income is measured in dollars. It's how much money you make. Cash flow is measured in time. It's how long the money you have lasts you, so that if you make $1 million, if you got $1 million income, that's a sky high income. But if your bills are $2 million, it's just broke on a higher broke level. But if you got a modest income, only $80,000, but your lifestyle costs you $40,000, your cash flow, 8/4 reduces to 2/1. You have twice as much cash to flow past your billing period. Cash flow is king. And as we work through our system, first thing I want you to understand is there are things that we can do to expand our cash flow. Number 1 thing you got to do is minimize your taxes. We'll talk about why that's important and strategic things we can do. Minimize your expenses, minimize your debt, and surprise, increase your credit score. Turns out that our credit score controls the cost of any of the money that we borrowed in the debt column here, but it also controls some of our expenses around the house, like our homeowner's insurance and auto insurance. Do you know that when your credit score goes up, those go down? I didn't until I found this process. Now, show of hands, who's seen this document? This is what we call a cash flow statement. It's a combination of your balance sheet and your income statement. Now, in the world of project accounting, I learned how to do accounting for projects but it was a breakthrough for me when I found Rich Dad, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, and his cash flow quadrant. So let me go back and look. Are the hands up in here? Let's see. How many of you are familiar with cash flow statement? Yes, yes, yes. How many of you run an accurate cash flow statement for your house? Philippe said he's familiar. Okay, yes, yes, yes. Okay, excellent. So in this process, as we think through our goal of creating financial success, we have to understand that our money has two jobs. Job number one is it's got to take care of our lifestyle now. But job number two, because of the changes in our economic climate, it has to take care of us when we are no longer able to or no longer want to work. So we have to put ourselves in a place to create infinite cash flow. Now, in the balance sheet, obviously our expenses are things that go out the door. That's taxes, interest, food, transportation. But in our liabilities column, notice I still keep my house, the place where I live, as a liability because of its behavior relative to my cash flow, meaning I have to live somewhere. So every dollar that I make here, that takes money out of my pocket. I know there's a lot of people that'll say your home is your biggest asset. Well, for me, it's the bank's biggest asset. Now, at the same time, the rental properties I own, we have two rentals, one in Forest Park, one in Tucker, and they're just liquidating one in Atlanta. Those produce income. Through rent, we get the cash flow, but also the capital gain so that you have an asset in your real estate that actually rides inflation. Same thing with private lending vehicles, collectibles, businesses. No, we're taught in the workplace to make sure that we're invested in our 401k, especially if they match. So your stocks, bonds, mutual funds, all of these build the picture of what our cash flow is. And as we go through, what you find in America is there's a growing gap between the haves and the have-nots, meaning the poverty rate in the US has accelerated. And Rich Dad did a great job of diagramming the cash flow of each of the classes in our society. On the left, categorizes that as the income and cash flow statement of the poor, meaning all the money that comes in from income comes only from the job and goes out the expense column. At the same time, in the middle class, the ongoing squeeze is that the money that comes in from the job gets funneled down through the liabilities column, handling the mortgage, the car note, the student loans, the credit cards, and still mostly goes out the window through expenses. And then at the very far end, that's the cash flow pattern of the wealthy, where the income, whether they have a job or not, comes from the assets, from the investments, and that's what funds the lifestyle. Now, our goal, if we choose to accept it, to create financial success, especially to create generational wealth, is to get to the place where we're so focused on acquiring assets. By definition, simple definition, things that put money back in our pockets. We good so far? Now, as I transition, Robert Kiyosaki also gave, I make sure to give credit for things that impact me personally, especially with my education and lifestyle. He let me understand that there was a possibility of a shift in quadrant from where I am to where I want to be. As an employee, I have a job. Self-employed was the S quadrant. B is you own a business with a business system so that you have employees that work and a system that works for you. And last but not least, quadrant I, goal eventually for everyone is to hit that investor quadrant where the majority of our income that sustains and supports our lifestyle comes from our investments. It turns out it's possible to exist in multiple quadrants. Now, just so that I know who's here, which quadrants describe you best today? Type it in the chat. Are you an E, you're a B, you're an S, you're an I? Who's who in the zoo?
It's a shy group.
E, S, and I. Good, good. Shauna? Jocelyn, E, Reed, E. Let me skip ahead and tell you what your two objectives are and remind you of this. Whatever quadrant you're in, at the end of your working career, you need to be an I. Meaning previous generations, I remember vividly, my grandmother and my aunt were both retired. They lived in the same neighborhood. You could walk from my aunt's house to my grandmother's house. Do you have family that live close together like that? They were both retired teachers. They had pensions. Between their pensions and Social Security, they could count on having enough money to live for the rest of their lives without having to work again. Unfortunately, back in the late 1900s, pensions went away. And the responsibility for being investors came to us, because when we decide to retire, it will have to be our investments, what we've got in our retirement plans and in our other investments that sustain and support. Making sense? So my question got to be, well, how do we get there and how can we make the shift happen faster? Couple of suggestions. And one thing I want to make sure that we're clear about after this conversation, because it was eye-opening to me, when Bill Gates was the richest man in the world, he said the source of his wealth was a precise understanding of the tax code. And people often, I saw this quote earlier today, it said, nothing is certain as death or taxes. And depending on how you tax, you get the rest in poverty. Now, here's the situation most of us find ourselves in. If we're in the E quadrant only, it's the tax trap, meaning part of the reason that taxes hurt so much is that we're taxed at the highest rate. Our earned income from our jobs is taxed on average 28 to 33%, even though last year, 2021, there was actually a 39% tax bracket. And it's the formula, it's the equation that creates the pain. Meaning if I've got a job only, I work, I'm taxed, and I get to spend what's left. It's the pay-as-you-go plan so that we are taxed every time income comes in. Now, conversely, business owners are taxed differently. This is tax code 1099. The IRS tries to hide things in code to make them intimidating so that people don't look them up. But you're a project manager, you're smart. When you find people in this category, first thing that pops out is they're taxed at a lower rate, 18 to 23%. But the second is the approach to taxation, meaning the business is able to earn money, the business is able to spend money, the business gets taxed on what's left. And this is why you find some of the richest people in America. If you think about the story of Amazon, how many years they were able to go without having to pay taxes because all of the income was consumed by the growth and expansion of their business. It put taxes under control and they get taxed one time per year. Does that make sense? Last category, gold category, and this is a way that the system is built in America because the founding fathers were property owners. Let me get to this side so that I could see. Capital gains tax. It's the lowest tax class when it comes to income, meaning it gets taxed less than 15%. But the way that it works, money gets to work, money gets reinvested, and it gets to make more money unmolested by taxation until the asset is consumed. Does that make sense? So if you think about it, if we get taxed more and more often in our jobs, if we get taxed with some controls in our business and we get taxed the least, our goal through this income shifting process is to shift ourselves from the highest tax bracket through the lowest tax bracket. Now, I'm sure you're saying to yourselves, well, what can I do? Well, you're a project manager. You have one of the most marketable skill sets in the world. Everybody has projects and problems. You can become a business owner today if you decide, and it puts you in a position where some of the things that are part of your lifestyle now become tax deductions. Now, I'm going to pause and transition because I do want to talk through a quick project plan, but I want to make sure that everybody's following. I didn't lose anybody in that process.
And Philippe does have a question. He says, so instead of signing under my name for a company as an employee, sign under a business name. Is that what you're saying?
If you don't have a business yet, I'm saying you should start one. When I do business and entrepreneurship coaching, when I coach speakers, I tell everybody, make sure that a part of your investment portfolio is a business that you control. And my suggestion, especially if you haven't started a business before, find a home business that makes sense to you, that you can start with the low overhead because it's already over your head, and use your home as a business center. A lot of people started figuring out that you can work from home for your employer during the pandemic. Turns out you can also work for you. And you get to learn some other things that are important in financial education. What do you mean, Richard? Well, once you become a business owner, you will need some sales and marketing training, but I put that in the category of income control. It's how you earn and control the earning of money. You'll have to do some more accountancy, more than we typically have to do in our jobs, but now things like the square footage of this room, my magnificent office. I'll give you a tour of my office if we have time later. Any of the places where we do our work become tax deductible. They were going to be bills already, but now you get to lower your taxable income legally, ethically, and morally. Wealthy people have done it for years. We just got to catch up to the idea that we deserve to be in that quadrant also. Did that help?
Yes, he says he understands. Thank you. And Shauna had a question or a comment. She said, I do have a business, an LLC, but it's all sunk cost at this point.
Good. I mean, this is what I'll say. If you look at Schedule C, and I won't get deep into taxes today, when you report Schedule C, which is where you put the income from your business, it's profit or loss from a business. Does that make sense, Shauna? So the investments that you're making put you in a place where Bezos was running negative cash flow for years before Amazon was profitable. But he was able to write that off against normal income so that we take down that tax bracket that we find ourselves in employees. Does that make sense? Wait, let me ask the question. Have you ever filed a Schedule C for that business, Shauna?
She said it does help offset. Oh, yes, her accountant has, yes.
Okay, make sure. I mean, if you don't have an accountant that does those kinds of things for you, we do want to elevate the ability that we have for using our business as a way to funnel some of our income in our control into a place where we start buying another thing. Because a business that you operate has two effects. It's an asset that you control the growth of with your ability to manage it, but it also produces additional cash so that you have more room for investing. And that's a part of my philosophy. We won't talk about it in depth today, but it's cash that you get from the cash flow that you get back from your job by lowering your bills, lowering your taxes, lowering your expenses. Use it to buy, build, or grow an asset, and then turn that asset into more cash. All right, so I know that when I saw and started understanding this, started reading all of these things, started getting into the mindset of wanting to create success, I started asking myself the question, well, what do I do first? I tried to do everything at once, and I at one point was investing 10% in my 401k. I had a rental house that we were struggling to keep rented. And I was trying to send $20 extra to every one of my creditors so that I could get out of debt faster. You know what that's called? Chaos. We got to find a way to take steps in a way that makes it possible for us to get what we want in the time that we want. All right. So talking about that process, let's talk about getting your financial house in order. Now, there are number steps, and I have individual modules that I facilitate and train and coach people through when it comes to this. But if you think about the process of building a house, most important thing you're going to have is your foundation. Is the mindset, the education, the game plan, and the team. Building out a written budget. According to statistics, less than 40% of households in the U.S. operate their finances for their income and expenses on a written, agreed budget. Third, mini emergency fund, anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000, followed by the process of getting out of debt. People come to me all the time saying, I want to get into some of the investments and other things that you're doing. And the first thing that we have to make sure that they've considered is there a better return by paying off some of the debt that you're in? Meaning, Anyone that has a credit card with a balance of 20 per, with a interest rate, 20% plus double-digit interest rate, that's a guaranteed return that you'll get on that investment just by paying it off and getting out of the debt cycle with that particular creditor. Next, you want to build a true emergency fund, invest for long-term, understanding, retirement. Put this in your notes. Matter of fact, put this on your mirror. Retirement is not an age, it's a number. And when you get to the place that your assets can produce the same amount of income as your job without you or anyone else in your house having to work again, you're free. It turns out that being wealthy you don't necessarily need $1 million bajillion dollars. You need enough cash flow for your current lifestyle based on assets that you have. And then last but not least, putting a roof on the house. Once you get to level 1 wealth, once you're out of the rat race, continue to grow and build the assets, the knowledge, and the people behind you so that they can do those things themselves. Now, have a breakdown on, we probably have enough time to go through 1 or 2 of these before we get to our end of time. So let's think about the foundation element. If you think about the foundation in the house, notice that I put the emphasis on your mind. Money's made in your mind. Between your mindset, your education, your game plan, and your team, those are the parts of your getting your house in order that as you grow and build, you'll find a need for more. And I focus first on the idea of mindset. And I use mindset as a noun and a verb. I say that you set your mind, you use it as the thermostat to adjust to the direction that you want to go. So as you're building this foundation, I want you to adopt that attitude of abundance, that there's more than enough and there's more in store for you, so that as you attain the ability to acquire assets, that you start to be opportunity conscious, that you put yourself in a position where every day you're able to learn something new about your financial education and the execution in those areas. And what do we talk about? Earning, saving, investing, protecting, even borrowing money. There are strategies to understand how to come out ahead in that game versus behind, that you build out a game plan to get from where you are to your next step along the way. And most importantly, understand the idea of financial independence actually requires a degree of interdependence. Yeah. Turns out that there is no such thing as a self-made millionaire. Everybody has a team of people around them that specialize in different things that they do. I mean, think about it as if you were staffing a project. You have a certain number of developers, certain number of administrators, analysts, and people executing the individual parts of the work breakdown structure. Everybody has a part that they play. Yours just running the project. Make sense? So step 2, written budget. Why written budget, Richard? Well, 2 things happen. When you combine the steps right here, your written budget and your mini emergency fund, I know the process of budgeting sounds boring, but it's probably the most important thing that we can do is spend every dollar that comes in on paper before we actually do it. And John Maxwell has my favorite quote when it comes to budgeting. He said, a budget is you telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. Now, there's a specific process that I recommend when I sit down for clients on their individual coaching for their makeover and their game plan. I want them to specify their income, list all of the expenses, and then subtract the necessary expenses from that income. Next step, apply any extra above the expenses to the next goal. See, too often the money that we have left at the end of a budget cycle ends up at a restaurant or a movie theater or on snacks or in clothes that we don't need. Understand, if you have not made it to at least that minimum goal of that mini emergency fund, again, mini emergency fund, $1,000 to $3,000. Track your spending. Once you set the budget and agreed to it, it's only 2, for most families, it's only 2 income periods in the month. Sit down and make sure that you track each of those things. My wife and I got to be really guilty early in our marriage of agreeing to a budget, but then we'd see an ATM machine. And if it was money in the ATM machine, it meant that that was extra, and that was a big part of how we got behind. Anybody else? Anybody else have that kind of problem with budgeting, but then ATMing your way out of your budget? Oh, let me come back. Oh, I see a question. Can owning rental property be considered a business? Yes, is one of my businesses. Now, and that is, how do I pronounce that? Is that Nanosi? Nanosi, did I say that right?
Yes, you said it right.
Okay. Scheduling wise, your rental property business is what's considered a passive income endeavor. What that means, but in translation, is that you are limited in how much you can deduct for losses that happen in the rental property by the amount of money that the rental property makes. So it behaves slightly differently than a business. Making sense? Because they end up filed on Schedule E. So you'll see the math in that when you get to it. It's a good business, definitely allows you some flexibility. And the most important thing is some control over, it gives you two things: cash flow, which gives you some tax benefits, and capital gains, meaning that's the thing that you have, where right now, if you're a property owner, inflation is actually your friend. Your property's worth more now than it's been your entire life. Good question. All right, let's see, where are we on time? Oh, we are right up against time. Let me just say this last word about the emergency fund, because your stress level is actually dictated by the size of your emergency fund. And there are two categories of emergency funds that you see in our Getting Your Financial House in Order picture, meaning there's first your mini emergency fund. The mini emergency fund is M-I-N-I, not M-A-N-Y. It's for little things that happen, because little things do happen. And if you're on track to create success for yourself, the easiest thing to knock us off track is an emergency, whether it's air conditioner, transmission, any of those things puts us in a position where suddenly the great plans that we had for getting out of debt are on a credit card because we didn't have the cash available to handle the emergency. Once you get the mini emergency fund, there's a structure, there's a process called a debt snowball. Now, I won't have time to teach in detail how to apply and automate your debt snowball, but make sure to contact me after. We have some tools and techniques that I've been able to help people hold themselves accountable to speed up the process of getting out of debt, because that is an investment in someone else's passive income. You see what I mean? And then your true emergency fund, and if our pandemic hadn't taught us anything, is that we need to have 3 to 6 months just in case the world closes up. 3 to 6 months in a cash equivalent. Make sure not to put your emergency fund into something sophisticated where you can't get access to it within 24 to 48 hours, or that is subject to the ups and downs of the market, because you're counting on that for stabilization in case of an illness or a pandemic, or in case a job suddenly leaves us or we suddenly leave them. That's the structure we'll end on right now, because I see that we are right at our time. But does everybody see that picture? Like, can you imagine what the feeling is to have yourself in a position where structurally over time, one step at a time, by the way, in the process and diagram that I just showed, always be willing and ready to go back to the next step. Meaning, if you're running your debt snowball, you finish the mini emergency fund, but you end up using the mini emergency fund, you need to go back to the previous step to get back into process. Does that make sense? And I'm going to skip ahead to some things because I've just been having way too much fun talking to you guys. And I do want to make sure that we start and end on time. So let me do a couple of things here just to make sure that let's leave some room for questions. So if you have any questions, I invite you, come off mute, share what you learned, share what you liked, and share what you will be implementing and sharing with other people as we share the gift of financial literacy with other people. Number of ways to be in contact with me. You can find me on my website is richard-hardon.com. Also, you can text or email me, meaning, let's see, in this view. I'll admit up front, it's easier to catch me by text message than by email. My email is quite like the ocean, meaning at all times, it seems like there is more email coming in the flood. If you text the word PMI success to 445944588, along with your name, just so I know who I'm sending things to, I can send you the worksheet both for our cash flow statement and the budget builder spreadsheet. It does help for some people to just have a template to start from. And, let's connect. Find me on Facebook or LinkedIn. Now, I'll tell you up front, if you're my Facebook or Instagram friend, you'll probably find pictures of me dancing, lifting weights, but also occasionally sharing some inspiration or thoughts about our process, the mindset and the team for success, and creating a success framework for the people around us. So with that, I will pause and ask if there are any questions, and then I have a question for all of you. Any questions? Let me stop sharing so that I can see. Did everybody get the numbers down?
Yeah, you can leave it up for just a moment. Shauna had a comment that credit cards are a weakness for her in the past, and sometimes even now when I haven't been as self-disciplined as I should be managing a budget. And I know that's a problem for a lot of people. So
yes, Shauna, I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean. And it's, if you think about it, there's an exercise, just remind me, I'll send it out, is just understanding the power of revolving debt and compound interest. I think one of the most brilliant products that banks ever made were credit cards. It made a relatively painless way for us to go into debt. Yes. But what you'll find with most credit cards, the best discipline I can give you is to pay them off and put them on ice. Have you heard this process before?
no.
Yes, Dave, I took a class, Dave Ramsey class before.
Dave already told you?
Yeah, Dave Ramsey, and he's like, destroy them, close the accounts. I'm like, that'll ruin my credit. So, so what I do is I pay them off immediately. So I never accrue interest or anything. I kind of use them as cash. But what I find myself doing is not being able to really do the debt snowball because I overused it, even though I'm still able to pay it down, never accruing the interest. It's just being disciplined insofar as, do I really need that off of Amazon? No, I don't. Stop it. Don't buy that.
And well, it's the insidious marketing engine too, because that's the other thing that's happened is that they're tied to our Amazon Prime account. So next thing you know, you were talking about something, it showed up in your Facebook feed, and then Amazon Prime is dropping it off at the house tomorrow. I'm not saying that's happened to me personally, but
yes.
If you ever see two Amazon trucks on the same street, my wife did that. Yep.
Yes, I have. And yes, that's exactly the experience I'm having. But this is a really good reminder. I think since COVID hit, the chaos and everything, I lost track of my game plan. I have most of my debt paid off, and then COVID hit, and it's just been crazy. And I lost sight of it, and I started spending again. And this is just a really good reminder. So I'm really glad that I attended tonight. So thank you.
Well, thanks. Because I mean, and I admit, for any of you, you know that I am a Dave Ramsey fan. Like when he started explaining the debt snowball, but more importantly, if somebody had been able to point out to me how much more money I could have made in homeowner investments if I paid off that credit card with either the 10% that I was sending to the 401k or the extra $50 each I was sending to every creditor. See, is the insanity of being able to take some time and think about what you want versus what you want right now. And this is especially, I didn't do an age survey for people in this group. I think it's especially imperative if you're looking to create generational wealth, is not just what you leave for your children, but leave in your children, teaching them. Because unlike us, they have had think about this one concept for young people. An ATM debit card and a credit card look exactly the same. Right? Meaning there was a time where I knew when I was writing a check, I was spending money that I had in the bank, or I was taking out cash and using cash. But once this card doesn't work, try this card. The difference between spending money and going into debt become relatively pain-free. And if it doesn't hurt a little bit, that's how we get lured into the place of not thinking about how much we're actually paying for those shoes or that couch or that purse.
So true. We have about 6 minutes left. One question came in. Do you have any recommendations for a budget app?
Budget app. So there are a number of budget apps that are available. I keep it simple at the beginning, meaning I started with just a spreadsheet. I kept, as a matter of, I'll tell you how silly I am. If you text me and I send you the spreadsheet, I took the cash flow statement from Rich Dad Poor Dad and built a spreadsheet that added up my bills like those bills. I wanted to play the cash flow game in real life. Now, it turns out that Microsoft Money has a good budget tracking feature, meaning it integrates with the back end of my bank. Let me also say, I'm an employee of Microsoft, so I get their stuff for free. And then for people that are interested in the debt snowball process, which does automate, there's a process I use. It's the Equity Max Debt-Free Lifestyle System. I can get you access to it. But what it does is it takes all of the bills that you have, what you owe, your monthly payment, and the interest rate, and prioritizes payments for each of those to pay off the debt in a faster period of time. For example, when I got started with it, between the debts that we had for our mortgage, our kids' student loans, and some other, those were the things that we had left because we just finished off the credit cards. We'd still be paying those for 24 more years, but using the debt elimination system, automating the snowball, we can be completely debt-free, including the mortgage and student loans in the next 5 or 6 years, which speeds up retirement because it reduces the amount of money that you need in retirement. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So just text me, remind me.
We have a great wrap-up question. Somebody missed the intro and is curious, do you do consulting work?
I do individual coaching. So there are people that work with me. We're building a community of people spreading this message. That's one of the challenges that I have in life, is just knowing that I want more and more people to understand that their money is making somebody wealthy. They just have to decide that they want to make the shift first in their mindset, then in their actions, to have that person be them. So matter of fact, just reach out to me. Let me know that you're interested in coaching, consulting, or the community. Just figure out how we can work together, because the main thing that we could do for anybody is put them in a position to have their money back in their pocket so that their money can make them more money. All right. Oh my goodness, it's 7 o'clock already. Well, 6:57. I really appreciate the time and the opportunity to share. Do me a favor. As you go through the survey, put in the things that helped you, that you learned, but most importantly, that you'd like to expand on. And we'll make sure to get that covered, because that's the last and most important investment people really consider, is the investment that they make in their time and their mind to get the thoughts that produce the actions that get them the results they need. So I'll turn it back over to you, Ann, and you've already queued up the survey. There we go.
Yes, thank you so much, Richard. This has absolutely been amazing. And, we talk about so much about keeping ourselves healthy and focusing on, really me time. And this is it. It's not just about being healthy physically and mentally, but also making sure that we are healthy financially so that we can enjoy some retirement time in our lives.
Exactly. Amen.
Thank you so much. And for everyone, please do take this survey. We would love to hear your feedback. I guess I'm a little biased. I thought this was absolutely fantastic, but please make sure you give us your feedback on the survey. Anything to wrap up from you, Ann? Maybe not. Well, please, the rest of the PMI chapter, please keep an eye out. We have another event later in May, and then we also, I'm sorry, in April. And then,
Sorry, guys, I was saying something.
oh, yes, please go ahead.
Sorry, guys, I don't know why I keep going that way. All right, PMI Atlanta members, ladies and gentlemen, please, let's just give Richard a round of applause. Once again, we appreciate you, Richard, for blessing us with this financial empowerment education. I believe now we understand that the strategies to shifting income is to increase our cash flow. I definitely understand that, and I can say from what I see from the chat, I know the members definitely appreciate this presentation. And on behalf of PMI Atlanta leadership team and the attendees, I say thank you. We appreciate you, and as a gesture of our gratitude, please expect a token gift from PMI Atlanta. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Take it away, Catherine.
All right, wonderful. Well, again, please go ahead and take the survey, look for our upcoming events, and we will be sending out the recording. So if you want to listen to it again and catch all the tidbits that Richard shared, please do so. Thank you, and we look forward to having you join us again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Talking on parentheses. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.